Hello, today we'll be playing with SwiftUI new animation modifiers. We'll use two of those. One is the PhaseAnimator that animates a view between predefined states, and the other one will be the KeyFrame where in different specific times we change values of views so we can animate them differently along a defined set of time. We're going to do that with two buttons. We're going to animate them off screen when the user taps on them. First, a quick overview of the app. So we just have an app with a sidebar with a list of reservations that the user has to manage the reservations of a hypothetical restaurant. They can click here to toggle a form to create more reservations with different guests and for a specific date, right? And that's pretty much it. Now here we have the list of reservations, and here is where we're going to apply our animations. Not to the list. What we're going to do is we're going to separate the first reservation and we want to pop it up to the user. We want to display urgency on that reservation. We could also check the time to see if it's more urgent or not, but yeah, that's a minor improvement that can be applied later. So we go to our reservations ViewModel, and the first thing is we're going to create another variable. And for future use, we are going to create another method that we're going to call in our ViewModel to handle that reservation. So we're either going to say, oh, the table was a no-show or they cancel, or the guests are seated, so we can get the next reservation. Okay, now on to what we intended, the view and animations. Okay, first we're going to move this grid to a separate view. So we have the next reservation, and it's called upcoming here. Let's create a text. And we have the time. Now, we were displaying the time. Let me see if I can show it here with this format. I want to also do that, and we can do that thanks to string interpolation. It supports adding text. Test it out. Yeah, here it is. So now we have the text. What we want is for it to pop. And because I know what we're going to do later, let's also add this in an edge tag. And here comes the animation. So what can we do here? We can create a PhaseAnimator. So this has different phases. I could use an enum. Here for simplicity I'm going to do numbers. So it's going to iterate between 1 and 1.5, and it's going to loop. So the view is going to be our text, and the phase is going to be one of these two values. For simplicity, since we have 1.1 and 1.0 and 1.5, we're going to do the scale effect. Going to be the phase. And yeah, sure. Let's play also with the color, with the foreground style. So if the phase is 1, meaning it's going to be in a scale of 1. It's normal. We do not want to do anything there, so it's going to be just the primary color for text. When it's bigger, I want it to highlight, so red, to make it a bit more visible for the user. Let's see how that looks. Notice that it's not that subtle, and that's because every animation by default now is a spring animation, but we don't want that. Luckily, PhaseAnimator has this animation, so let's use it. After we declare our content, we can return this. It passes the phase, so we could actually have different animations for different phases. But right now what I want is, let's have an ease in and out, and also we can change the duration. Let's add for 1 second. Better, no, better. Now that's gonna highlight for our user. Now, what else do we want? So we have the reservation, but right now the user in the app cannot do anything. What happens if the guests are seated? What can we do? So let's add a button so we can seat our guests. We're not gonna handle this here. We're gonna enable the view to show 2 buttons to determine if the reservation was canceled or if the guests were seated. This will appear below the upcoming reservation. It will be another section. And here, let's apply different animations, but we're not going to do it with this PhaseAnimator. We're going to do the other way, which is by adding KeyFrame animation. So depending on what button the user picks, we're going to display an animation to animate the button off the screen. Okay, we have now our 2 buttons. Let's see them on the app. We enable this, and here we have our 2 buttons. Now when we tap them, the list goes away. We can toggle this on and off, and we have our reservation list. Now, we don't want this to happen immediately. We want to tap, the button will animate on the screen, and then this will happen. Let's create a method for this. And since we want to delay it, let's add a dispatch queue main async after. We want our animations to be a little bit creative. We're going to use keyframes. So let's just give 44 seconds to perform the animations. After the animations are performed, we just call the ViewModel. And we need to stop editing as well, since we already dealt with that reservation. How do we do keyframe animations? So we start with this, and this is what we got: KeyFrame Animator. Notice we, unlike our face animator, we do not want the animation to start playing immediately. We want something to trigger it, which is the user tapping on the button, which is why we're going to use this one, the one that has the initial value, the trigger, the content, and the keyframes. Let's first create the trigger, which are going to be 2 states. Keep in mind that the trigger is not the fact that the boolean is true, it's the fact that the boolean changed. Now, let's start here with our keyframes. We need one more thing to apply the keyframe animator, the initial value. This is a value, but what is it? Let's define it as a struct, since these are going to be the values that we're going to be animating. And that's it. We already played with the scale, so let's not do that here. Or the color, we could, but we don't need to. And let's begin with the happy one, where we seat our guests. So we have the keyframe animator. Also, let's add default values, so it's easier to implement this. So the horizontal translation is 0 and the vertical translation is 0. We start at the origin where the view is, and the angle is 0. No rotation at all. We'll have here content and the value, which is the animation values. And this is what SwiftUI is going to use to know how to animate during all of the keyframes. So the content is the view, which is our button, and we're going to be applying a rotation effect with the angle, and we have it here in the value, and then we're also going to do the offset, which is going to be the translation. And keep in mind we can do other stuff like we did in the face animator up here with the foreground color and the scale effect. We could apply all of those as long as our values struct contain the values so that SwiftUI can apply these modifiers. Now we specify how SwiftUI is going to handle our values, how it's going to apply them with these modifiers. Now we need to specify what's going to happen in each of the keyframes. And that's the last item here, which is the keyframes. We're not going to care about this value since we're going to define it here. So what do we do here? We need to specify, let me see if I can pop up the documentation. This is a keyframes builder. How do we do that? We do a keyframe track with the key path and the content. So what's going to be the key path? The key path is going to be a key path to this value struct. So let's start with the horizontal translation. Do it with backslash and here the autocomplete works. Now here in the track, we're just going to handle the horizontal translation. And how do we do each of these? We have keyframes, so we have different options. We have the linear keyframe to linearly animate this, so linear interpolation. We have the cubic keyframe, and we have a spring keyframe. So for this movement, we want the button. Let's pop this up. So what we're going to do is we're going to make this button jump each time higher. It will jump 3 times, and then it will animate out of screen. So for the first one, while it's jumping horizontally, it's going to move a determinate amount in a linear fashion. So we're going to first start the origin. That's what it's going to be, and it's going to remain there for 0.4 seconds. We're going to move it 60 points, 120. Keep in mind, I already implemented part of this before just to see how the animation values do. This involves a lot of trial and error. So it's 120, then we're going to move it to 250, so it's going to be the first jump, the second jump, the third jump, and then just out of the screen, that one, let's add a spring. And we don't even need the duration. Let's do 800 just so it goes, we guarantee that it goes out of the screen. Now we have an error here. Oh, it's a writable key path right here. We need to make all of this var. And let's see how this goes. Pop this up and let's see for our guesses. Tap it, moves one first, then the other. Okay, now that we see the horizontal translation, let's move to the vertical, the one that's going to be doing the jumping. For the jump, every time we do this movement, we want the button to go up and down. So we're gonna, in half of the time, we're gonna send the button up, and half of that, and another, in the other half, we're gonna send it down. It was actually going up a little bit fast. Let's duplicate the amount. And then it goes back to the ground and it won't jump again. So here, jumps a little bit more and it goes away. And that's the beauty of keyframe tracks. Notice that I am doing stuff in different moments. Something that was not possible here with the phase animators. Just in each of these phases, it was doing changes. We could play along, not doing anything for that specific value, but it's just better with the control that keyframes offer. So again, we create a keyframe track for the angle. In the content, we do nothing. So we're gonna stay in the 0 angle for how long? While it's doing the first 2 jumps. And then we spin. So we're gonna do 1 jump to 360 degrees, and the duration is gonna be 0.4. Let's see how this looks. 1 jump, 2 jumps, spin, and then it goes away. That's it. Now for fun, let's just do the other one. It's gonna be different. This one is just going to go a little bit back. Just as if it, we're just going to do as if it was winding up. So it's going to go a little bit back, then it's going to go towards the get seated button, and then it goes out of the screen. And while it's doing the wind up, it's just as if it was preparing to run. We're going to tilt it. See, shakes, moves back, and bye. PhaseAnimator is a very easy to use and convenient modifier when we want to mix different animations and loop over them. For more complex animations, the ones that we want to have control over, animate different values in different points of time, and we don't want all of the values to be animated along together. We have keyframes to control the animation. Keep in mind these animations are a little bit more complex to implement, and we cannot cancel them as we normally do with animatable properties when using animatable effects. That was all for today. Bye.